Now, back in the early 1990s, right around 1994, I went to the trial of the traveling vice lords. There was 30 defendants on trial, and the government said that this was just a small fraction of the entire vice lord organization. At one point, at their peak, they had over 25,000 members. Uh, the traveling vice lords were charged with running a multi-million-dollar crack cocaine operation. The government had a black female FBI agent explain to the jury a little history on the gang, some of their structure. She said that they were the second largest gang in Chicago at the time and the oldest street and prison gang in Chicago. Um, they were charged with over 300 murders, and they ran a multi-million-dollar crack cocaine operation on the west side. Now, here's the leader, one of the leaders of the traveling vice lords, and one of the main defendants, Willie Lloyd. Um, he came home from jail after serving 4 years for a gun charge. He was picked up by his homies in a limousine with women. They were drinking, smoking on their way back to the west side. And shortly after, he hooked up with the Patterson brothers. Now, the leader of the traveling vice lords back in the early 90s and the main defendant at this trial was this guy here, Andre Bebe Patterson. The government alleged that him, his brother, a few of his cousins, and childhood homies were running a multi-million-dollar crack cocaine operation, and they were also charged with hundreds of murders. Now, the government had at least a dozen witnesses, ex-gangbangers, who decided to snitch and cooperate, testify how easy it was to process cocaine into crack. They also talked about how violent the gang would be, including shooting people in the legs, stabbing them, or even killing them if they disobeyed orders. Location is key, right? One of the reasons the vice lords were so successful was location. They were located right off of the 290 Eisenhower Expressway, which is the main conduit into downtown Chicago and also out to the western suburbs. You could easily drive into the city from the suburbs, get off on any exit, score your drug, your crack, get back on, and heading the opposite way, heading home. Easy access. Now, the traveling vice lords of Chicago ran a multi-million-dollar crack cocaine drug operation. They were a very violent, very dangerous crew. They allegedly killed over 300 people in a 4-year span. Every single defendant was either killed or locked up in jail, only for a new gang to take over the territory. The prosecution showed what seemed like hundreds of housing projects. Almost every single housing project building on the west side from the Chicago Stadium on was controlled by the vice lords. They had security out front. They had guys with high-powered rifles on the roof with police scanners. The entire projects generated millions of dollars for the gang and were highly secured. Now, during the middle of the trial, the government had several witnesses, ex-gangbangers, victims, snitches. They would get up and testify how lethal, how violent the gang was if you broke any of the rules or if you had to have any violations. They had young black kids lifting up their shirts, showing stab wounds, gunshots. They showed hospital photos, etc. Now, one of the first witnesses that took the stand for the government was an FBI agent, and he testified that the crew would talk in code, and it took him 2 months of hours and hours of listening to transcripts and tapes to crack down the code. And a big part of the code is when they talked about certain territories and dollar amounts, they would refer to NFL football teams. Now, part of running a multi-million dollar crack cocaine operation obviously is violence. These guys were charged with over 300 murders. They had several snitches that testified to taking part in the shootings. They also had several detectives that talked about the investigation. Unfortunately, these shootings continue today on the west side of Chicago. Now, here, downtown Chicago in Jackson and Dearborn, is the infamous Dirksen Federal Building. This is where all your major federal trials are. It's open to the public. Any one of us can go. You show your ID, walk through the metal detector, and watch the drama unfold. Some of the old outfit guys used to say you lose your rights as soon as you walk in through the door. This is where I attended all my major trials right here at the Dirksen Federal. Now here's Federal Judge Posner, who presided over the traveling Vice Lord trial. He definitely had his hands full. There was 30 defendants, all known gang members. Each defendant had 1 to 2 lawyers each. There were so many people in the courtroom, the judge had to have an overflow courtroom to hold all the people. But at the end, the judge agreed with the jury and gave them all life sentences. Now, like in all federal trials, all the defendants were found guilty, and the high-ranking defendants, Lloyd and the Patterson brothers, they were all given life sentences. The vast majority of the other defendants got anywhere from 20 to 40 years in prison. And when this gang was sent away, it was just a matter of time before a new gang took over their territory. Now, on any given day, any time of the day or night, you drive on the west side of Chicago, and all you see is zombies, strung out, crackheads, heroin junkies. Pretty much every other liquor store or corner store is an open drug market where you can see them buying and selling drugs all day long. Although you see the blue cameras, you don't see any cops anywhere.